Hello and welcome to today's stream. I haven't streamed in a little while, so I thought we'd have a little bit of fun with building an SDK. Thank you for anybody turning up and tuning in. Bear with me while I drink some coffee. It is going really good, thank you, Haz. Super busy, but also super happy, so winning on both counts. So we're going to build an SDK. It's not going to be based off of Laravel. It is going to be a somewhat adaptive SDK that will work with any framework, because we're going to lean on PSRs, where we can auto-detect or inject a specific HTTP client to handle the transport layer. I have built a tool in advance. This one. It's called sdk-tools. It's got some HTTP components, response components, payloads, query parameters, authorization, lots of cool things. Very few actual requirements, a few development requirements, and it's just really easy to use. So we're going to have a little go of using it. This should definitely help. So I have started a new project, Open Library SDK. There's nothing in here other than composer file, a few development dependencies to allow me to do what I need. And that's it. So let's just get started. So composer require, don't need that part. Tell you what, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see what is going on. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of practice from streaming, so bear with me. Right, so we've got our SDK tools. We are good to get started. So just Steve King, Open Library, and what we're going to do is we want to be able to get authors, get works by an author, get the author's image if we want to, get a work, which is a book in effect, get the additions and get the image itself. And you can also get things like subjects. This is roughly what we're going to be aiming for. So without further ado, why don't we get started? The first thing we need to do is look at how we're going to build out a library to then start calling subsequent methods to fetch what we need. Now, to do that, this library will definitely help us. So we can build out an SDK really easily. We just need to extend the SDK, pass through some transport, and how we want to authenticate. So if we go have a look at the Open Library API, you don't actually need an API key for this, which is great. So it's a perfect example for building SDK because there's no commitment. All they ask is that you don't hit the API too much. So what we will do is we will just come to here and we're going to create a new client. And this client is going to extend SDK. So what we want to do here is public function on the struct. We need to have a HTTP client injected into so if we just get the parent, we could just grab that instead, and then that can get gone. Actually, yeah, we can actually just remove that, can't we? So public static function build. Going to build a client. Return new client where the client is going to be. We come and have a look down here. We just need to transport and get the client. So what this is going to do under the hood is it will use HTTP client discovery to find the client. I've wrapped it in this HTTP transport as more of a helper. You could just do that yourself, but we are doing it this way. Hello, Tio. Thank you for enjoying my content. I hope I can continue to keep it interesting for you. PHP Storm seems to have frozen. Beautiful. Love it when that happens. There we go. Change log for open library SDK. Fix that while I'm there. So we don't need that. That's going to auto discover. So now we have got a library. So what we want to do is think about testing. We want vendor bin test. Let's just initialize. Don't want to star it because it's already starred. So declare some strict types. Do this. Let's fix up this namespace. Open library tests. Fix this. Import that, and we want to do that in the main directory, and then we can just delete all of these that we don't actually need. Right, so to get started, we have got all of this magic, so we can just create a new test. Client test. It can build a new client, and we want to expect that client build to be an instance of client. Or really, we want it to be an instance of SDK. It's the more important one here. So yes, I am playing around with the expectation API and a higher order expectation API where possible, because it looks cool, to be honest. Now that pass. Oh my God, what's going on with my computer today? Suppose test. Have a look. One failed. So it is failing because we cannot find an implementation, which is, you don't enjoy, but sorry has. You know, is not quite as entertaining as others, I suppose. To be honest, anyone who can tune into my live streams and listen to my monotone voice for that long is, you deserve a medal. So to fix this part, we are going to install a development requirement for the Symfony HTTP client. Because what the error is saying is that it cannot find a HTTP client available. So it should have it now. No plug clients available. We may also need to install, just run that one. We're going to compose dump the autoloader, and we're also going to reload this from disk because it's a new project. Now let's have a look. Now we're doing good. So we can get a new client. That is the start. Composer test coverage. Did I add that one? No, I didn't. Let's add that quickly. Useful little scripts that I like to run. Tell you what, I'll add it at the top. Coverage got vendor bin pest coverage. So if we just run the coverage, no code coverage driver is available. That's fine. I probably uninstalled it when trying to fix stuff, knowing me. So we have our client. We can test stuff. So what I'm going to do is quickly install Xdebug while we start looking at what is next. So we've got the SDK. And now we want to look at how we can forward calls. We've got the important stuff running. So coming back here, we now want to look at things like authors and books. So now if we just compose a coverage, is it going to work? No, it did not. Yeah. Where is everything hiding? Somewhere in here. No. Not in there. .2. Oh, I don't even know where it's hiding, to be honest. I'm just going to ignore it. We'll ignore coverage. Coverage isn't important today. We'll worry about it later. That's tomorrow's problem. Right, so we've got the client. So protected, but we do have access to the client, so we don't need to add any properties there. We can override the client for testing purposes, which is great. Next thing we need to think about is getting authors, let's say. So public function, authors, typos galore. So we can start to create some resources, because when we're looking at RESTful stuff, we're looking at resources. So in here, we can just create an author resource. Did I create something for that as well? That is the question. I did create a resource contract. Even better. Don't know what I added to this. Apparently we want to be able to get the SDK. We want to return stuff. So before we get too far, we need a concerns. We need to start thinking about a trait. And we're going to say can access SDK. This is going to be a trait. And then this is going to have a constructor. So the constructor is going to accept private read-only SDK contract. SDK. Public function SDK is going to return the SDK contract and return this SDK. So when we come over to here, we can just say use can access a SDK to resolve all of that good stuff. So our client needs to be able to call this resource. So return a new author resource, and the SDK that we wanted to pass through is this. Now, one of the reasons for doing this is that we want to be able to kind of call these commands in a chain. So we want to go, okay, so client build authors fetch, for example. So we need to be able to call this specific resource, which implements this contract here. which just says that it's got access to the SDK, so that you can get the SDK and then get the HTTP client to then start making requests. So if we have a look at our requirements here, we want to be able to fetch and we want to pass in a string. So we just scaffold this out. Public function fetch. I'm going to pass in the string for an identifier. Typoscript at its best. So we want to make a request here. So we want to try, and then we want to say that our response is this SDK client send request. Now our request the new request, the method get, and the URI is down here somewhere. Here we go. So authors, this is what we want to get. Got way too many windows open today. So we're going to get this. And then this part here is going to be the identifier. This is going to fetch some JSON for us. There's our response. We want to potentially catch anything that could be thrown. So we'll import that. What's this complaining about? So, okay. Oopsies. PSL request. There we go. That should resolve that issue. So what this request does is we could pass through a method in the URI, which will create a new request, and then we can just convert it to a PSR request so that we can pass it into the client nicely. This could, I suppose, this could be built statically to simplify, but this is version 0.0.1 or whatever it is of the SDK tools. So this is the first time I'm building an actual SDK using it. So there could be some teething issues, but we will find out. The next step is let's create a custom exception. And we're going to want to say failed to fetch author. No, this is just a random SDK. Ooh, that is not what I wanted to do. So extend exception, very simple. So what we can do then is we can flow a new failed to fetch author, pass through the message, which can be failed to fetch author with identifier. Then we can pass through that previous exception. We can pass our own status code here if we wanted to, but right now I'm not going to. I like to leave the status code aspect of flowing exceptions down to the implementation. So if you're, let's say you're, I don't know, your application is implementing with this, integrating with this SDK, you'd try and do a fetch request, you'd catch the exception, and then you'd throw something specific to your application, not SDK level exception codes. So we can throw it from here. So what this is complaining about now is unhandled, which is fine. Sending request, we're looking good so far. Nothing to do other than return the response at this point, right? So for now, we're just going to return that response. The identifier for the author. So that is that. What options do I have? There we go. Add that as well. There's another potential exception that could be thrown there. So from PSR response is we're just going to basically just build up our own version of a response, which makes it a little bit nicer to work with. Okay, so we want to return a response. In fact, apparently, that's fine. We can work with that. Now it's complaining about this because I need to take that and replace that. Now we're looking good. We've still got two issues apparently. Qualifier can be replaced with an import. Simplify that one. Multiple definitions exist, but you know what? I can ignore those errors. This SDK is for the Open Library SDK. So here is the Open Library. I'm going to paste this link in the chat quickly in case anyone wants to have a look at it. It's got a really cool RESTful API. You can fetch authors, books, subjects, search. You can do lots of cool stuff, basically. So we're going to explore it as we go through. Next step is going to be it can get the author's resource. So at this point, we expect that when we go client build authors, we expect this to be an instance of author resource, just to make sure that everything is working as expected. As best. And we're doing good so far. So there's that. So now if we just come here, we can probably create another directory for resources. And we can just add an author resource test in here. What we want to do is just say that it can build a new instance. We want to expect that when we client build authors, we don't even need to test that, do we? Fetch with it can fetch an author. So let's some data sets, new directory data sets. Going to go authors, data set authors. And I have already kind of grabbed a couple of IDs. So we've got Terry Pratchett here. Here's his unique identifier on the Open Library. We've got J.R.R. Tolkien, another favorites. And one of my favorites is Ursula Guin. So there are our authors. So we want to fetch. We can pass, I believe here I can pass through ID. Then this should accept that ID. And should to the instance of a response. This will actually make a request, so I'm not going to run it too many times. And we are still making a request, and we're good. Yeah, no problems, Has. You go do what you need. Hey, Hossein and testing channel. Right, so we're making requests. That's not too hard. The problem that we're having now is we're making 3 requests to the API. And when you write integration, you don't want to hit the actual API. You want to start looking at using test doubles and mocking and all sorts of funky stuff. So to combat this, what we need to do is we need to refactor the test. To do that, we have to jump out of the higher order expectation API, unfortunately. As cool as it looks, it does have its limits. But I found. So if I do this quickly, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build the slide here. And what we're going to expect is client authors fetch to be that, and then we can up here we can have a string for the ID, and then that is now a normal test. This should replicate and still do the exact same thing. If it doesn't, then I need more coffee, and we're good. We are still doing exactly what we were doing, but now we're not using that higher order expectation. So what I can do instead is I can say client. I want to set the client, and I want to do a new client for the mock. Here. This should mock the request, and it will be quicker. Now at this basic level, it's absolutely fine. But as we go through, we're going to want to start seeing more interesting stuff. I haven't used this that much, if I'm honest. Let me import this as mock client because we're going to want to play with it a little bit. So we're fetching an author. That's absolutely fine. Let's go and have a look at this. What do we get back? A lot of stuff. If I take that, we'll just come back to here. We're going to create a fixture. Fixtures, directory, authors. I don't know, fetch.json. We're going to do that. Then we are going to format it. Right. So let's have a look at this JSON output to see what we actually get. Zoom. So we get a title, entity type, the Wikipedia entry of personal name, source records. Another type with a key, death date, birth date, linked photos, a bio, remote IDs, which is also pretty useful, name, additional links, key, revision, created, last modified. Lots of cool little things that we can actually work with here. So in our author resource, we can actually start to look at how, do we want to return a response from the SDK? Most likely not. Great with the SDK, most likely want to do something with this value out of the integration. So what we need to do is build out a way to convert that response into a data object, into something that they can understand, and just go, okay, cool. So response, get body, look for this key, hope it's there. I prefer it when API SDKs actually give you contextually aware objects to work with, because otherwise you're just working arrays and all that rubbish, which makes you hate PHP sometimes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a data object. And I'm going to create an auth data object. Do I have an interface for this? No, I don't. That's fine. So, instruct. So when I'm working with API, typically what I would do is I would go through this process. So I end up with what could be passed back over on one window, and then what I'm trying to build out on the other window. So I can say, okay, so I'm going to make everything public. We're going to have a title. We're going to have a link to the public read-only string name. Public read-only an array of records. Type. And then we can go public read-only. What I'll probably do at this point is install something like Carbon. So composer require, is it Netbot? Carbon. It's Nestbot, not Nestbot. Cool. So composer require Carbon. And I can pass dates and work with dates and be happy with the dates. So we can have a Carbon here for the death. This could be null, of course. Public read-only Carbon interface birth. We got the birth records, public read-only array of photos. We're probably going to want to put something like the bio up here, public read-only bring remote IDs, yeah, public read-only array of IDs. Pretty useful, got the name already. Public read-only array of links. Key, revision, created, last modified. This could be useful to someone, but right now I'm not going to add it because I don't think it's adding the value that I'd want. So basically what I've got is I've got this nice little object which represents the data coming back from the API. Now I just need a nice way to work with it, right? So this is where I create a factory. Within that factory, I would create an author factory. I have a static function called make. Now I'm using a static function here because I don't have dependency injection, and adding a DI container to an SDK just does not make sense to me. So we'd have an array of data at this point, and this is going to return an author. So return new author, and we can start building out that author. So this is how I typically do it. We have author over here. We just need to understand what we need to return. The title is going to be data title. I mean, we're making some assumptions on the format here, but you've got to make some assumptions at some point, right? Wikipedia, we add in the name, data, name, bio, data, bio. Oh, that's a good question. If I wanted to start a commercial project with Laravel, which version would I use? 10. It's the latest version. It's going to have support for the longest. So it's what you'd want to use, really. Right. We want to get the time, and we want to go data. Let's go back to that J data here. Make sure we're spelling things correctly. Birth date is how it is spelled. We got make sure those are all correct as well. Personal name. There. So yeah, Laravel 10 has got the longest support for it, so it is what I would use. So death is data date. If it is available, then we will carbon pass, where the time is data death date. Otherwise, we provide null. Photos is data photos. Then records is data source records, I believe. I mean, some of this just isn't really needed, but I'm adding it just to show you that you can really. So data IDs, you want to get the remote IDs. And links is just data links. We now have an author being returned. We only have to use this once, so we can come back to our author resource here. And instead we can say return author factory, make the data is the response from PSR response to the response is the response. And we want to return the JSON version. So we can remove that. Actually, what we want to do actually is we do it this way. We want to get that part there. In the callback, we are going to get an array of data. This will return an author. And we want to say author factory make data like that. And this is going to return an array. Don't need that anymore. This could be static because it's not calling anything internally. And that's good. What is the last version? So I typically stick with LTS. And then unless I need something from the latest version. At work, currently we're on Laravel 9. We're planning a move to Laravel 10, but we're planning a bigger move in the background on other things. So we gotta, you gotta weigh that part up. What's going to be most important? So now this needs to be an array. So now if we compose a test again, we're looking good. Let's just dive and dump on it. Not getting it. Okay. First for each. So for each one, that's not what I want to do. So fetch an author. Let's just delete that. Don't need that anymore. What we're going to want to do is look at how we can build out this mock to say return this response. It's easier in Laravel to do this. Let's be honest. So it returns the correct payload for an author. String ID is return. So then we can say with authors. So if I just quickly build this up and see what we can do. So the mock client itself, we want to look at HTTP mock. PHP, HTTP, mock, PHP, HTTP. Mock client. Documentation, useful. First request, send request, fake response and exceptions. So create the mock client, create a mock for the response interface, add the response, send. So there is some stuff you can do. Let's have a look. So create a mock for the response, client add response. So we can actually look at doing this ourselves. I'll do it online and I'd probably end up moving this out to the PHP file so that it's a helper function. So here's a mock. Our mock is going to be a new mock client. Mock client, we're going to add a response. Response we want is going to be we've got a from PSR, but we don't have a to PSR. So we're going to have to build up a PSR response here. New response. Naum. We'll go status. It's going to be status. Okay. The body needs to be a stream, perhaps. I believe I actually did build a helper for this. That would be useful if I did. SDK transport, no. HTTP request response payload. New payload to stream. Perfect. New payload to stream. Perfect. Now this payload just needs to take in the body. So the content for it is going to be a fixture where we can just pass through authors fetch, and that is what we can add to pest down here. So function fixture. This is a lot more long-winded than like the Laravel way, but kind of worth it. So we basically just want to grab the JSON content. So if file doesn't exist, file name is current directory, fixtures, name.json. Let me slow and invalid argument exception. Fixture not found. Name. If we do find it, then we want to return file get contents. So the file name is this, and we want to make sure that we are returning the string version. So, get in there. Fixture to stream as body. Any headers, any reason? No, not bothered about that part. New mock client, add response, client build, injected in. Let's see what happens with our test now. So where are we failing? String given. So resource argument 1 data must be of type array. So author resource line 45. At this point, we're getting some data, fetching. What do I think about it? I absolutely love inertia, actually. Let me just die quickly on data, drop that type. See if it works. No, it's not actually reporting it. Okay. Instead, let's dump die here. Am I getting it? Am I getting it? No. Unexpected. I know. I know it's an unexpected token. I'm going to comment this out for now while I work on it. Make it a little bit easier to work with. Okay, it's not handling it at all, is it? Okay, so we're going to have to go through this bit by bit. We're going to array map over the data. The data that we get. Now, this is fetching a single author, isn't it? So we shouldn't need to do that. No wonder I'm getting confused. Okay, so author factory make where the data is at. So now I can delete some of this. Port that one. It's returning an author now. Looking good, looking good. Looking good. So our author resource to be instance of author. To scream, fetch new author. Okay, I'm doing all of that up here apparently. Oh, compose test again. Let's see where we are. We're doing good. We've got an author. So it's returning it correctly. That's working. That is the response. So down in pest, we want to function build response. So what this needs to do is basically, okay, we're going to do build mock instead. No, build response. Return new response. You need that one. So the status will be a status. The body will be a fixture name, so string name. So we can copy that, pass in name, pull in the payload, building a response, returning it. So then here, the response can be build response where the status is status okay, and the name is authors fetch. In theory, this should still work as expected. And we're doing good. So we're using fixtures now, which makes it a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer to use. It means we're not touching that API. So we're good. We are good. Author resource test. What I'd probably do here is say author equals that expect author to be instance of author class. Then let's say we want to make sure that, I don't know, title to equal, I believe it was. Make sure that we are accessing the data correctly. And we're looking good. We've got a client, we've got a mock. Building a mock client. Looking good. Don't need that anymore. Still need that stuff. Still need that. Okay, we're looking good. So we can fetch an author. Let's just close all of those down. Now we want to say, okay, how about we want to get all the works for an author? So our resource, just collapse some of this. And then we can say public function works. Again, we're going to pass through that identifier. And it's pretty much going to be the same step here, other than we're going to say /works.json instead. We need a different one and a different exception. So we're going to say, let's create a new class, failed to fetch author works, extends exception. Simplify that. I like to put a little dash in there myself. It just makes it feel nicer. So now we just want to say failed to fetch author works, failed to fetch author work, failed to fetch works for author with identifier, etc., etc. So now we can add that. It's going to get request to there. There's our response. Next, we just need to work with that response. So we can use this, and we could say this one will return an array. So we can array map this one. So the array is going to be that. Typically, I'd do a collection. However, I'm trying to avoid using too many dependencies for this. As you can see, currently we've got two main dependencies, which is the SDK tools, which allows us to do the nicer developer experience, and then Carbon, just so we can get dates nicely, right? So all back, this one should return an array. So we can just do this one. This one will be a static function. Then we're going to need to build out another data object for a work. Yeah, a work is an author's work. So we're going to go for this one. Fetch file works.json. I got the feeling this is a large file. It is pretty large. Let's go see what we have to deal with. So we have entries. Lots of different entries. Can I just collapse everything? Folding, collapse all. Perfect. First one, entries. Let's get an entry. So get a multiple author. I'm not going to worry about that bit. I'm just going to focus on title, revision. There's so many different things. Covers, location, subtitle. I think works are going to be a little bit too dynamic for me to work with nicely. So I will just return the response directly at this point. It's just going to get a little bit too messy doing it any other way. So we can get the author's works. So if we come back to author resource and down here, what we're going to do is say it can get an author's works function string ID void with authors. Then what we want to do is client build client authors works ID. Can I bar dump that nicely? Make sure we actually get what we expect to get. 3 risky is it's not dumping it out. Okay, so we're going to again set client to a mock. We're going to build the mock up the top. And then we're going to add a response to that mock. And we're just going to use that. Mock. Then what we want to do is expect, get that. We're going to say works equals we expect the works to be array, not to be empty. Let's test it. We're looking good. So then what I can do is for each, yeah, that's about the limit of what I can actually test right now, because the works are a little bit too dynamic in nature. Hello, wife, you have joined me. An hour late, but you've joined me. So yeah, that's where we are so far. Author image, we could probably look at, copy that link. Let's just go have a look at it. There's Terry Pratchett, a handsome devil. So author resource, public function, we'll just say image. Was it image we wanted to call it? I don't know. We'll find out. All right. So string identifier. Then we're going to want a size. So I'm going to create a quick enum. And we're just going to call this size. This is an enum. It's going to return a string. And the options are small, medium, and large. So S, M, and L. So case small is S, case medium. I mean, this is kind of almost obvious, but it's nice to map this to something that gives you some kind of understanding. So then we can add the size as size. Again, we're going to do something like this. But instead, the URL is going to be more like this, covers.openlibrary, where we're replacing this bit with the identifier, and then this bit with the size value. To PSR requests. So we're going to say response. I don't know. Response from PSR response. There we go. It's going to return a response at this point. Looking good, looking good. We'll have a parameter string identifier, the identifier of the author, the param, the size, of the image to return. We're going to return a response, and we've got two potential error throws. And then we're just going to add this. This returns an array. The identifier is there. So we've got PHP standing. Let's have a quick look at how we're doing. Level 9, without testing it at all. Found one error. Yeah, that's actually not bad. So the author resource method image should return a response, but returns a response contract. So image response contract. If that, hey Mark, that was one error on PHP stand level 9 without testing. Just gonna brush the shoulder off there. Hey Patricio, hey Mark, hey everybody joining. For now, I might leave it at that because that is a basic SDK, how it works. Author resource test. Okay, I'll quickly do the author. It can fetch the author's image. We're going to say string for the ID, void. Let's just quickly say there's authors. We're going to do something similar again. I'm not sure how best to do this, if I'm honest. Because that's building a response for a JSON response, but this isn't actually JSON. We may just have to kind of wing it. We're going to get the image, and we want the size to be large. We want a large image of Terry Pratchett. Expect image to the instance of response contract. So we are getting a response. That's all we care about right now. So we compile the test. All good. Hey, what's going on there? And compose right. Let's just fix up the code. Make sure we're still getting tests passing. Still getting PHP stand passing. Why is it being so slow? Right. Let's initialize it as a repository. That is all of that. Now you can do the exact same thing with books. How long have I been going? I've got time to do the books. We'll do one endpoint for the books, just so you can see how it all fits together. So we're going to need a new resource. We're going to want a book resource. This is going to implement the resource contract. Instead of adding those stubs, we can say can access the SDK. Public function fetch string identifier. We are going to try to build a response by saying this SDK client send request. The request is going to be a new request. To PSR request. The request is going to have a method. The method we are going to use is get. The URI is going to be this one. Specific works. Yep, that's correct. So drop that in there. Then we can replace this with the identifier. We can catch any potential exceptions. But we want to throw a specific exception called failed to fetch work. This is going to extend a standard exception. To simplify, then in here, we can throw a new failed to fetch work with the message of failed to fetch work for something simple like that, passing that previous one of exception. So we've got a good stack trace. Add that dot comment there. At this point, we should get an object back. What is the difference between an SDK and a package? So an SDK is a software development kit. It is a package that is designed to work with a specific API. And what I'm doing here is building one for the Open Library API using a package called sdk-tools, which I built, which you can find at this URL. It's only had a handful of downloads, but I find it super useful. It does everything I need so far. Point. Let's say we want to get a work. I'm just going to copy that. Come down to fixtures, directory, works, And then I'm going to create a fetch.json. Add that, paste that, format it. And let's work on an object again. So another data object. We're going to go for a work for this one. I'm hoping this is a little bit more nice. Fix that typo quickly. Public function construct. So let's go and build out this object. So we're going to have an array of subjects. Public read-only array of subjects. Public read-only string title. Don't care about adding the authors, not so important. You know who it is. Public read-only array of covers. Actually, authors, you might want to know the author. No, because you're going to have to make a separate request. Okay. Not interested. Okay, so you've got subtitle, public read-only string subtitle. However, I assume that this could potentially be null for some books. Public read-only integer for the latest revision. Public read-only int for revisions. When was it created and last modified? I suppose created could be important. Public read-only carbon interface. When was it created? Public read-only carbon interface for modified. We don't need carbon there. Cool. So there's that. Now we can create that factory. So a work factory. Top 3 technical books for developers. That is a good question. It depends what sort of developer. Sometimes a developer wants something that might not be important to their work, but it's going to help them learn. That is not what I meant to be doing. Got distracted there. My bad. I'll put this over here and drop it back in. There we go. So we are going to return a new work. The title is data something or other. Let's go find you. Title. Subtitle. Data. Subtitle or null. Better web developer, especially PHP, if you want to be specific. That is so. If you just want to become a better developer and not focus on Laravel or Symfony or specific frameworks, I would say your best bet would be modern PHP book. That is really good. You probably want to look at something like Clean Code to understand how to write better software, and Object Style Guide. These would be my 3 top books for that. So Modern PHP by Josh Lockhart is slightly out of date now. I know Daniel Opitz is doing some stuff around that, and you can actually find that on GitHub. The next one I would say would be the Clean Code by Robert Martin, classic. And then the last one would be the Object Design Style Guide by Matthias Novak, another fantastic book. With those three things, you'll learn how to write good, solid PHP that's designed well without focusing on any specific framework. Yeah, that's what I'd say. Put my drink back up there and carry on with this. So we got work subtitle. We've got the latest revision, which is data, latest revision, revisions, data, revision, oh, it's revision, not revisions. My bad. We can rename that. Not too hard. Then we got the created. Ooh, the interesting part. Created is going to be carbon pass the time data created value, and then we'll have modified, which is the same thing, but under last modified. Then we're going to have subjects, data, subjects, covers, data, covers. So what we've got there is the covers. You can use the image API to get those specific covers, and then you can actually use these subjects to search and get specific subjects as well. So yeah, clean code's a good one. If I'm completely honest, I would actually start with the Object Design Style Guide by Matthias Novak. Personally, I prefer it. So there's a revision. So let's go back to that work factory quickly. Revision. Unknown parameter. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's just being funky. There we go. And so we can now get that. So we can say return work factory make where the data is response from PSR response. This is going to return a piece of work. No return times. Yes, it does. Got a return type. Get the JSON there. Add the throws tag. Don't need that open anymore. All looking good. Then we can say that the parameter string identifier is the book to fetch. We are going to turn work. All looking good, all looking good. Everything is still there. So then in our client itself, we can just say public function works, work resource book resource. Return new book resource where the client is this. Was it client or was it something else? SDK? Yeah, SDK. There we go. Jobbed. All looking good. That is all linked up. So, I mean, we could test it if we wanted to. Client test, resources, book, resource, test. Can be the exact same thing as this over here. It can fetch an author. Instead, it can fetch a book. So it can fetch a book. Can fetch. Can. Okay, cool. So we're going to import this client. For this one, we are going to replace with alias, and we're going to call this a mock client. Import the status. Import the actual client. Works. Fetch. Work. This should be an instance of work. And we expect that title in the fixture to be Science of Discworld. Books, dataset, new books. We've got some IDs available in Notion, so we can go for, actually I've only got the one. It'll have to do. For now, let's stick with just one. We're going to run load test. One's failed. That's fine, looking good. And what we need is works that there. Now we're good. So really easy to work with doing an SDK like this. To fetch a book. Compose a scan, make sure we're still looking good there. Tick tock. Make sure our code style is good. Do that. Laravel height code styling. Then we can just push that repo up. GitHub.com. Am I logged in? No, I'm not. I have to do it on a different window out the way quickly. GitHub.com. Let's just go create that repo. And we can push it all up. New repo. Oh, come on, don't be slow. Open Library SDK and SDK for the Open Library API written in PHP. Create the repository. And then add. I'm not going to push this up to packages unless someone requests it. So now I can show you the repo. Here is the link. I'm just going to chuck that in the channel. Ta-da! So I'm not adding a README right now. It does what it does. Got stuff. It's got its tests. Got Laravel Pint. Updating the changelog anytime that there's a release. So let's say, for example, created a release, then that would update the changelog with any PRs and summaries. It will just build it up for you. So that is how to build an SDK. It is so much simpler than what most people make it out to be, with the right tooling, of course. Close all those tabs. As you can see, that's taken me, what, hour and a half? And I've got most of it done with some good test coverage. No reason you can't do the same. So give it a go. If you like the video, like, comment, subscribe, all that, the usual YouTube stuff. And yeah, I suppose I'll see you next time. I'm planning my next stream probably for tomorrow. This one will be for Laravel, under the Laravel news channel. And I will be doing stuff to do with error monitoring and logging and tracking and all that funky stuff. So I'm going to schedule that in a little while. Keep your eye out for it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining me, and have a good day. Good morning, good evening, whatever time it is. Have a good time. See you later.